good to go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Staying Safe Online, Striking the Right Balance Between Convenience and Security. It's a real pleasure to have you all with us for this 11th webinar in our webinar series, our weekly Thursday webinar series. And I see both some familiar names in the room and some people who are joining us for the first time. So welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. It's a pleasure to have you with us. As a reminder, we post the videos and the slides from all of our recordings on our website, techforward.com, right after the session, so you can follow up right there after the fact. We're also streaming live on YouTube. So hello to everybody on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to our page if you haven't done so already, and like us. If you like us, I hope you do.
If you like the
And
video, at least.
a few other pieces of housekeeping. I see many of you have found your way to the chat and you're saying hello from all over the world: Cairo, New York, Mexico City, Lima, Peru, Geneva. Hello to my fellow Genevan. Nice to see you.
Make sure to send it to
Argentina,
everyone.
Rome, Buenos Aires, and many other places. As a reminder, in that chat box, you can send messages to just panelists, or you can send them to all people who are here, to everyone. If you want other people to read your hello messages and anything else you might put in the chat, please do switch that over to everyone. And I think that, yes, and the Q&A. The chat box can get pretty crazy at times, so use the Q&A if you have a question you want to make sure we see, and we will try to answer your questions as we're going along and make this interactive as always. And as is often the case, we also have a brand new course coming out today, so stick around to find out more details about that. But first, let's talk about staying safe online. A big hello to my co-host, Alex. Hey, Alex, how's it going?
Hey, Josh, it's good to see you. It's going very well. It's been a sunny day, lots of sunny days in Brussels, but it's still nice to get out of the sun into the basement and do this webinar with you
You
again
just
and
let the
again.
cat out of the bag that you're working from your
Yeah,
basement. We would never have known.
no, because of my snazzy background, I know.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know us, my name is Josh Goldsmith. I'm a conference interpreter, tech trainer, and all-around geek, I'd say, based in Geneva. And I'm
Accurate.
joined by Alex, who is a staff interpreter at the European Commission, doing everything for Tech Forward in a private capacity, of course, and who also knows a thing or two about tech. And one of his favorite subjects is the one that we are going to be discussing today. And so we are really in for a treat. First of all, what we've got planned for you today. We'll start by setting the scene, talking about whistleblowers, especially Snowden, and then we'll dive into the content, talking about encryption, cloud storage and computing, secure communication, and how you can have safe, strong passwords for all of your sites. So that's what we are going to be covering today. But first, we have a few polls to get the ball rolling. So we will go ahead and pull those up. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, you can just go ahead and type your comments into the chat there. So the
I'll
first
keep an eye
question
on that
is,
too.
how safe do you feel online? And the options are very safe, somewhat safe, not very safe, or I'm not really sure, I don't know. And I see the answers are pouring in. Feel free to tell us a little bit more if you'd like in the chat box as well. I see at the moment, we'll give you another 5 seconds, but we've got a pretty even race between somewhat safe and not very safe.
Nobody is feeling very safe.
Nobody feels very safe.
That
Zero
speaks volumes.
responses about
Yeah.
feeling very safe online. It's
Maybe we can change that today. Who knows?
hopefully we can at least
Or
help you
tip the
feel a little
scales at
bit
least. Yeah,
safer.
exactly. All right. What do you think? Should we close the poll? I think
Let's
we've
close
gotten
that
most
poll.
replies.
And here are the results. The winner is somewhat safe. That's good. 51% of you are feeling somewhat safe. 37% of you are feeling not very safe, and 12% of you aren't quite sure, which makes perfect sense. And that's why we're glad you're here, so you can learn more about how you can stay safe
Exactly.
online. We have one more poll for you right now. This is a multiple choice poll, so you can answer any that apply. Which of the following do you feel comfortable with? Encryption?
Maybe you've tried it before, yeah, something
Yeah.
like that.
Cloud computing, so using the cloud, surfing and communicating safely, password management, or none of the above, which is totally valid. Hopefully you'll walk away
And it's
feeling
anonymous.
at least a little more comfortable with some of these topics by the end of our session.
Exactly. So maybe we give people a few more seconds to reply. It's sort of still moving, a little bit more even than the poll we had before. But yeah, looking good. And by the way, little spoiler, these are some of the topics that we'll be covering today. So
But
let's
you
see
knew
how you
that because
feel about
you
that.
saw our marketing materials and you knew that what we
Exactly.
were going to be covering in this session.
Okay, so maybe 2 more seconds and I will end the poll. That's about 1 minute in, and let's take a look at the results. Here they are.
Right, so the
So password
winner.
management is doing pretty well. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to see that. I mean, it's still not
Absolutely.
50%, but it's good to see that a lot of people
Yeah.
already understand how to have strong, safe passwords. And some of the other topics like encryption, cloud computing, and surfing and communicating safely are a little bit more challenging for some people. And a full quarter of you have said none of the above. So lots to learn in this session. We're
Come to the
excited.
right place, guys.
Exactly. We are excited to dive in, and we've got a whole
Yep.
bunch to cover. We're going to do our best to get through it all in this round the world tour of staying safe online. So let's start by setting the scene, Alex.
Yeah, exactly. We always have too much stuff. We have a lot of pack a lot of stuff and material in these webinars. But as we said, we wanted to set the scene a little bit. And I first developed sort of the first version of this talk many years ago. I think that was in maybe 2016 or so. And I've updated it over the time. And I've always sort of started off with the story of Edward Snowden because it's just such an interesting story and still sort of we can still feel the consequences of that today and see many developments that started with his leak. So if you don't remember Edward Snowden, he is an American, of course, currently lives in Russia because he has no other place to go, basically. And he was working as a private consultant in the intelligence industry in the US, and actually comes from a family of people serving the state and the public good in the army, in the Coast Guard, and so on and so forth. So he did that as well. But he then at some point realized what was going on and what was going wrong behind the scenes. So at some point, he basically decided to collect that information and make it public at some point to let the public know about these, outrageous things going on. And if you're interested at all in this story, I really recommend watching Citizen4, which is a documentation about the whole Snowden thing and how he decided to go public, how he talked to those journalists like Laura Patras and Glenn Greenwald and so on. So that's a really interesting, very riveting documentation, which I highly recommend. And just to give you basically the highlight reel in a negative way of what Snowden uncovered. So he told the world about the NSA, the National Security Agency in the US, intercepting phone calls and peeping in on those phone calls. Then remember, we had all these different sort of interesting program names like PRISM, for example, where internet companies would be required by intelligence agencies to transfer user data to them for further analysis. The Tempora program, which was really, I think, an eye-opener for many of us, where the British Intelligence Service, the GCHQ, basically found a way to access the internet cable that goes, into the Atlantic to the other side of the pond and intercept all the internet traffic going through there, which is, is insane if you think about it. Or Xkeyscore, for example, which basically captured the entire global internet traffic, which is insane, and is sort of trying to analyze that and search it to find specific keywords. And then, of course, there were a lot of sort of top-level politicians, international political leaders, including lots of EU leaders like Angela Merkel, that found themselves spied upon by American intelligence agencies. Which, by the way, reminds us of the fact that it's not just the American agencies, but there is this alliance that you may have heard of called the Five Eyes, which includes the US, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the UK, sort of the traditional partners, the traditional intelligence family, if you will. But of course, they also share information and collaborate with so-called tertiary partners like the German intelligence services and so on and so forth. And the interesting or scary bit about this is that there's not just this sort of state snooping going on for security reasons and other reasons maybe, but a lot of this is also happening sort of from private companies, commercial companies that are, of course, that have a different objective in mind. It's usually about selling ads, targeting ads as precisely as possible, finding the right eyeballs, as they call it, to put an ad in front of. So that's what the information collection is about in the commercial sector, which doesn't make it any better, of course. Okay, and then, of course, you will have heard, at least if you're in Europe, you will have heard of GDPR compliance, data protection. So just to point out once again, this is not a GDPR webinar. We are not GDPR consultants that can help you get your business GDPR certified, as it were. So if you're looking for something like that, you'll have to look elsewhere. This is really about sort of staying safe online, as we said, and keeping the data safe. And just to finish up the scene setter, here's a quote which I think by now is very famous by Edward Snowden. And he said that arguing that you don't care about the right to privacy because you have nothing to hide, that's one of these things that comes up all the time. Yeah, but you have nothing to hide, so why bother? But it's a bit like saying you don't care about free speech because I have nothing to say. And I think it's really one of those quotes that the more you think about it, then the more you let it sink in, the more if you say, oh yeah, he's really got a point. I should really care about these things. So that's one of the big motivating factors why we're here today and why we want to share all this information with you. And we're going to dive right in and look into a topic that maybe sounds a little off-putting, scary to some of us. I don't know. That's encryption.
It certainly sounds scary to some of us, Alex.
Yeah, exactly. And that's maybe also due to the framing. You know, sometimes encryption is framed these days as something that only the bad guys use, you know, to hide their bad dealings. But that's not true. There are a lot of very, very good use cases for encryption, and we'll get into that a bit more. So what is encryption? Just on a very high level, it's basically the process whereby you take a piece of information that is plain to see, plain to understand, also called plain text. So you can read it, you can see it, and that gets converted basically by means of very advanced mathematics into ciphertext. So it gets scrambled, encrypted. That's basically what encryption is on a very sort of high level, just to explain that to you. And the idea is that basically only authorized parties, only those who have permission to do so, can turn this scrambled message back into plain text so they can actually understand what's happening inside that message. And for that, they use some kind of key of some form or another. And we'll get to a very nice practical application for that in a minute. And just to say that, because sometimes it seems to me that this is not particularly clear, is that encryption is never impossible to crack. There's always a way to crack even very advanced encryption. The question is really how complex is it and how long does it take? Because if you look at modern computing technology, which can do a lot of things in a very short time, it is possible to crack encryption, but sometimes even for an advanced computer, it can take years. So it's just not practical. It doesn't make sense. Then again, if you get into things like quantum computing, you know, it looks different, but we're not quite there yet. So in any case, encryption is really about making it more difficult and more complex for people to get into your information. It's not really impossible per se. And the interesting thing is that sort of simple approaches to encryption already occurred 4,000 years ago, which I think is really, really interesting. So in terms of use cases, you've certainly heard about encrypted messaging. You know, if you look at messengers like WhatsApp or Signal, for example, where you have encryption going on, often you will hear the phrase end-to-end encryption, which means that the message, if I were to send a message to Josh, if it is end-to-end encrypted, I could see it and he could see it, but nobody in between could read the message. They could see the scrambled version, but they couldn't see what I'm writing to him. So that's kind of the idea of end-to-end encryption. The thing, however, is that if I communicate with Josh, and I do that a lot because of the webinars, we generate a lot of metadata. So if somebody were to look at my internet traffic, for example, could see, okay, there's a message on, I don't know, WhatsApp or Slack that was exchanged between Josh and Alex on Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m., let's say. And sometimes that information, that metadata can be very, very interesting for, a commercial company or a law enforcement agency, because they can see, okay, who contacted whom at what time. Sometimes that is very interesting information. But of course, in order for this communication to work, the metadata has to be public. Otherwise, my message will never reach Josh because they don't know where to send it to. So the message itself is encrypted, but not the metadata. If we were to take a practical example, if you look at WhatsApp, that's an encrypted messaging service. And you see that when you use it, your messages are encrypted, even in a group chat, for example. But of course, since it runs on your phone, and you kind of have to log in with your phone number in a way, WhatsApp knows your phone number and also has access to your address book usually. And since Facebook bought WhatsApp a couple of years ago, it's possible now to accumulate user data and to basically match Facebook users with WhatsApp users and also see what they call the social graph, so the social connections that they have, which in itself is not really great if you look at the safety and security record of a company like Facebook. So that's not necessarily something that I really like. But anyway, we'll talk a bit about this whole question of finding the balance between convenience and security. Another use case for encryption is encrypting data. So you could encrypt your entire hard drive on your laptop, for example, which makes a lot of sense. That's very easy nowadays, whether you have an Apple device, an Apple laptop, where you can use File Vault. It's free, it's built in. You flip one switch and it's encrypted. It's as easy as that. That, however, means that once you open your laptop, you fold it up, you'll have to enter a password. Otherwise, it doesn't work, because that password is the key to decrypt your information so you can use it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Same is available for Windows with a built-in tool called BitLocker. And especially if you travel a lot, I mean, not right now, obviously, but in normal times, if you travel a lot with your laptop, it's a good idea to turn the encryption on and to have a password that you type in when you open your tablet, or you use a fingerprint reader or Windows Hello, which does face recognition, whatever it may be. And we'll put more information on that and how to do that into the slides. So Heidi, that was called BitLocker. And if you have Windows 10, which I think is the current version, that's what it's called, BitLocker. Okay. And just to finish this off, because this has been in the news recently, is the whole idea of backdoors for encryption. So basically giving law enforcement agencies and others a way to get in through the back door and see that information when they have a warrant, for example. So maybe there's a criminal investigation going on. And at first glance or first sight, it sounds like a good idea. But the problem with these backdoors usually is that they end up in the wrong hands eventually. And then that means that the bad guys can basically break the encryption too. And that's not what we want. This is a very short version of this problem. I'll put in a link to a great episode of Last Week Tonight by John Oliver on exactly this topic, which they discussed when the whole Apple versus FBI controversy broke out a few years ago. So very interesting to just watch that again from sort of today's point of view. Okay, and since we already promised you some hands-on time, here it is, Josh, over to you.
Yes, indeed. So we're going to demonstrate this activity that we want to have you do. And so let me just pull this right up on my screen. What I'm doing is opening a website actually, called Codemoji, which is about encryption. It's a simple example of how encryption works. So when you do this exercise, you're going to do exactly the same thing. You'll see this, and you type a message. Whoops, helps if I spell it correctly. Guess it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't.
There's my message. And then you can see on the right side, it's scrambling it. And then I select my emoji. I'm going to go with the one with the 2 hearts for eyes. That's my cipher that's being used to encrypt the message. And then I'm going to just tap click on share this message, and there we go. I've got a link to share, and I'm just going to pop that right into the chat for everybody, and then Alex is going to have to open this and show us how you decrypt this very secret, top secret message that I've just sent him. You're just, we can't hear you though, Alex.
Sorry, I just said I'm going to open this and see which window it appears in because I don't know which one I need to share. So just a quick second. I have so many windows open. Here we are. Okay, so this is what it looks like on my end. Hope you can see that all right. Someone sent you this scrambled message, and now I will try to decipher it. Josh, did you tell me which emoji you were using?
I think I did. Do you remember what I said?
Oh, is it the one that we used during our test as well?
No, it's
No,
not.
because
If you
I was
don't know the cipher, you can't unencrypt it. It's the
that's
one to the
exactly
right of
right.
it, the person with the two hearts for eyes.
All right, because I was just replying to a question here, so I must have missed that. Here we go. I picked the right emoji. It says encryption is awesome. So if I pick the wrong emoji, you see, I get something else, complete gobbledygook. Has to be the right emoji, and then it works. Okay, so that's Codemoji.
All right, so now we are on our first interactive activity of the day, which is picking somebody, right? Going to the site, we've just popped the link into here and writing your own encrypted message. And then you can either send it to a friend who's watching, a colleague who's watching, make sure to let them know what emoji you have to use to unencrypt the message unless you want them to not be able to actually view your message. And if you want, you can also pop that right into our chat box here or use the chat on YouTube to send it right there. So we'll give you a minute or two to write a short message, send it to somebody, and then use the emoji that they have told you to unencrypt that message.
Should be fun. I always forget to prepare the hold music for these activities so we have something going on. So people don't think the webinar has crashed. Okay, so maybe one more minute.
Maybe they're waiting for our running commentary.
Yeah, maybe.
What would the hold music be for this? Something, you know, James Bond-esque?
Yeah, or maybe just something like Jeopardy. I don't know.
That's
But yeah,
interesting,
it
Jan.
has
I've
to be.
never tried it on a phone.
Yeah, it definitely worked on the iPad. That's where I tried it. So I'm not sure.
All right, I see our first person has sent one to the chat. Yeah, the Jeopardy music is good too, Heidi. I agree. I'm gonna try to check out Emma's message.
Should be the smiling devil. That's a good emoji to pick for the encryption. Oh, it wouldn't let you type. Ah, that's annoying. Okay.
All right. Decipher it.
So does it work?
I don't know. I'm still waiting for the emojis to pop up.
Okay. They must be wondering where all the traffic comes from right now.
All from all over the world, people are
Yes.
using their site.
Okay, just a few more seconds, and then we'll get back to our presentation. It worked.
All right,
That's
it
great.
worked.
Thanks for letting us know, Sarah.
Glad to hear that that worked, Sarah. It looks like
Okay.
quite a few of you have been sharing these here. Pretty awesome. We won't spend too much more time on this. It's quite interesting, though, that some of you are trying it in different languages with different character sets. Obviously, this is just a very simplistic example. And if you're going to be using professional grade encryption, it can handle other
Don't use
languages and
this.
other
Yes.
character sets. But for this example, that particular tool may not have been built for Korean or for using on a phone. Duly noted. Okay. So that was a moment of fun, and you can keep sending your messages. And now let's roll right along to our next topic. All right, keep on rolling along. There we go. To talking about the cloud. And as you can see, Alex, it looks like there is no cloud.
No, there isn't really a cloud. I hate to disappoint you. You probably know this already, but I just love this image. I don't know. I stumbled across this years ago on the internet, as one does, and I've been using it ever since. I don't even know who made it. I'd like to credit the person, but I don't know. So there is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer. This is a sticker that you can buy, by the way, if you want to. And just to mention a few of the pros and cons here, because cloud computing obviously is a very useful thing. So it has its pros. For example, for collaboration, that's something that without which Tech Forward wouldn't exist, because Josh and I are collaborating through the cloud basically every day, hours every day, not hours, but you get the idea. We collaborate a lot through the cloud with Google Docs, Google Sheets, Zoom, what have you, all these services. Another advantage, of course, is that you can access your stuff from many devices. So if you use a service like Dropbox, for example, you can get to your documents not only from your laptop or your desktop computer, but also from your phone or tablet when you're out and about. And it's also, I'm very hesitant to say this, but Josh told me to, it's kind of a pseudo backup. So it's not, because it's not really a backup, because if you change something on one device and it synchronizes the changes to the other devices, it's not really a backup, because then it changes everywhere. But of course, you may know this. Lots of these services like Dropbox does it, iCloud does it as well, and so does Google Drive. If you never really quite delete a file, but it usually goes to a bin or some kind of holding space. And then usually you have about a month to go back and restore a file if you need an earlier version, or if you need something that accidentally got deleted. If you need that back, you can usually do that. So just take a look at how that works for your cloud service of choice. No problem. If you discover it in time, obviously. That's why it's not really a backup. In any case, there are some cons as well, because since there is no cloud, it's just someone else's computer, usually a big data center, you don't really know where your information is stored. So you don't necessarily know who could potentially have access to your files or to your photos, let's say, because there are a lot of cloud-based photo services these days as well, and I use them myself as well. You don't really know who has access. It's a question of trust, that you need to have into your provider. And if you use the collaboration side of cloud computing, of course, it's always possible that your colleague deletes a file. If Josh shares something with me and I accidentally delete it, and we realize that 2 months later, the file's gone. Tough luck. So if you don't have a backup, a proper backup in that case, it's just a problem. And so here again, we come to the whole point of striking the right balance. So thinking about questions like, is this a file that is maybe confidential information? Is this something that I got from a colleague, from a client, and they were trusting me with keeping this information safe and secure? So maybe I only store it on my laptop or only on my iPad. I don't sync it to Dropbox or Google Drive. That's an option. So the question is, can this go online? Does this even have to go on the cloud? Of course, if it's nothing confidential and it's something that you need to collaborate on with other people, that it's perfectly fine to put that into the cloud in services like Google Drive or OneDrive or whatever. And there are, in fact, I think this is the question, if I got it correctly, that Mary was asking, is how do you find a balance between sort of using encryption, but still using the benefits of cloud collaboration? And there are two services which I will admit straight away I haven't used personally. I've just taken a look at the website and sort of to see how those services work. These are services like Cryptomator and Boxcryptor that basically make it possible to still use cloud services, as you can see here, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, or iCloud, for example. So put the files there, but still have them encrypted while they are there. And you still have the possibility to share them with colleagues, let's say co-workers, or maybe with friends or family, if that's something, if it's private information that you're sharing. So if that's something that's potentially interesting to you and useful to you, you can take a look at these two services, Boxcryptor and Cryptomator. That could be potentially interesting for you. And then just to wrap up this whole idea of sort of, does the cloud really exist in terms of the internet? Not really. I think
it certainly doesn't look like that.
No, it's a very clever marketing term, right? That's what it is in the end. So I guess what it looks like is what you see on the photo on the right. So it's a typical data center with a lot of computers and hard drives, lots of air condition as well. So it's a very energy hungry thing. The advantage, of course, is that using this kind of cloud technology provides a lot of potential, a lot of possibilities. So, for example, if you look at automatic spam filters in Gmail, for example, or other email services, that people used to say, okay, Google is reading your email. That's, it's not really wrong. It's also not really true, because it's not like an employee at Google is actually sitting down reading your email. It's just, it gets read automatically by a machine. The machine looks for certain keywords, certain behaviors, certain sort of IP addresses where that email was sent from, to decide whether that's spam or not. But that can be used in a bad way as well, because if internet traffic gets intercepted, intelligence agencies often use so-called selectors or keywords to analyze email conversations, for example, and to find incriminating stuff. And you can really end up in an investigation when you've done nothing wrong, just because you used the quote unquote wrong keyword, which of course is not great for freedom of speech and things like that. Also, the whole question of rogue employees, you may have heard of that case. I think a couple of years ago, it was when an employee left Twitter. I don't know if he was fired or if he was just going somewhere else to work. And on his last day, he decided to delete Donald Trump's Twitter account. So for 11 minutes, there was no real Donald Trump on Twitter, which a lot of people would really enjoy. A lot of people would probably hate, including Donald Trump. And of course, they had a backup, so they restored everything and it wasn't a problem. But this sort of issue of rogue employees, of course, can backfire, and they may decide to just delete a few files randomly, and then you could get bitten by that, which of course you don't want. And then another problem with these sort of basements full of data centers and computers is that, of course, it's possible for secret government access to go in there, for intelligence agencies to go there. So in the US, for example, there's this whole practice of the national security letter. If a company, an internet company, is served one of those letters, they have to share information and user data with the intelligence agency, and they can't even tell you about it. So they're not allowed to tell you that your data was accessed. So you don't even know, basically. Of course, that's a big problem. And then, of course, the whole question of hacks and, bad people trying to crack encryption and then publishing information that they've gathered. So you'll hear about these data leaks, 2 million usernames and passwords published on the web, 3 million, whatever it may be. So lots of bad stuff potentially happening there. By the way, if you have any sort of experience about this or any opinions, you can, of course, share that in the chat on Zoom or on YouTube at any time. No problem whatsoever. We're very curious to hear from you. And of course, we don't want to just throw all these problems out here. We want to provide a few solutions. For example, this one. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about this, Josh?
Sure. So what you can see here is a special kind of external hard drive, which I'll get to in just a second. But what I wanted to say is you should always make sure that you have multiple copies of your important stuff. I cannot tell you how many friends of mine and family members have come to me and said, oh, I lost all of my photos when my phone died, or what have you, or the important paper you were writing, or your documents you were using to prepare for an assignment. And there's a solution. It's actually called the rule of 3 for backup. And the idea is anything that's important, you should have 3 copies of anything you care about. And not only that, it's a 3-2-1 rule. So 3 copies of what you care about in 2 different formats, because different formats can be fallible. So for example, you could have it in Dropbox and on a DVD, or on your hard drive and on a memory stick, or CD, and who knows? There are lots of different options there. And then the 1 is it shouldn't all be in your house, because God forbid what happens if there's a fire and you lose everything you had. So it's great if you have an external hard drive and a pen drive and you've got it all, but then it's completely useless if they're all in the same place. So the 1 is 1 offsite backup. So 3 copies of what you care about, 2 different formats, 1 offsite backup, and that is the recipe for success. Now, that can be a bit overwhelming, so we have a little bonus rule, which is try to automate this. If at all possible, use an option that will automatically back up all of your data for you. If not, put it on your to-do list. Put it in your calendar as a recurring thing to do on a regular basis. And in fact, we talk about to-do lists and calendars in our productivity course, but more on that in a moment. But yeah, put that reminder in there so you actually remember to do it. So all of this long background to tell you about what you can see right here, which is a network attached storage device. This is the Western Digital MyCloud. You can see on the back, it's got an Ethernet port, so you can plug it right in so that it's making a backup of all of your stuff as you're going along. And what's really cool about it is you can put a password on this, and even if your other devices are turned off, you can access your data from elsewhere. It's sort of like dialing in, and you type in the password, and then you have access to all of your data. So your computer doesn't even have to be on, but it's a backup that you can take a look at when you're on the road. And I definitely have had this happen to me before, that I needed a document that I only had on a different device, a different computer. Maybe I was traveling with just my tablet. I have many documents in my cloud storage, but not all of them. Some of them I don't want to put there, and you may need another copy of it. So this is a handy little solution for that. That's what I wanted to say about that. But Alex, you have another one of these storage devices that you've been using very successfully for many years, right?
Yeah, I couldn't help myself, of course, being the nerd that I am. I just took it up a notch. And I bought one of these. So this, again, is also called a network attached storage. This one is from a company called Synology, as you can see on the device here. There are also others like QNAP, so on and so forth. It's the same idea. So it's basically like a big hard drive that you connect to your router, so via cable or via Wi-Fi, whatever works best for you. In my case, it's just sitting right next to the router, so I just connect it via cable. The interesting thing here is that there's not just one hard drive in there, but I have one that has 2 hard drives. So there's a copy of everything. It just mirrors everything. So if one hard drive goes bad, I'm still sort of on the safe side. And you can buy these sort of as big as these with 8 or 12 hard drives in it if you really need to. It's probably overkill. But in any case, the advantage of this being that it not only serves for me as a backup destination, so I run backups for my laptop and for my wife's laptop as well, backups for my kids. I also use this to make an automatic backup of the Google Drive folder that Josh and I use all the time. So just in case something happens, I still have a copy here in my house. And as you can see from the icons up top here on this slide, is that you can also install actual applications on these devices. So if you wanted to, you could use this as your media library, your photo library, for your digitized DVDs that you may have at home. You can use this as your email server if you wanted to. You can even run your website from this, a wiki, like your own Google Sheets, Google Docs, your note applications. It really does a lot of things. Probably too much even for me, but I use a few of those things, and it's been super, super helpful, very easy to access from mobile devices as well. And I have it set up in a way where I can access it from anywhere in the world as long as I have internet connection. And my home internet is working, which is, to be fair, most of the time. Thank God, knock on wood. Okay, but just to stick with the whole cloud topic for a little bit more, we wanted to share this with you. I don't know how many of you have seen this before, tried this before, but I think you all know that Google knows a lot about you. I mean, you specifically, if you have a Google account and you use services like Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Docs, and so on and so forth, Google Maps as well. Basically, Google keeps a record of pretty much everything and anything and everything that we do on those services. If you use the Google Assistant to ask for directions or for, I don't know, conversions for a recipe, it will save that too. So you can go back and see what you watched on YouTube. You can even listen to yourself asking the Google Assistant things. And we basically wanted to encourage you to just take a look at that. Because at least for me, when I first saw this was a real eye-opener. And I went to change a few settings, privacy settings straight away. So here's our little sort of invitation that we have for you for an interactive activity. See what Google knows about you specifically. So open up your browser. If you have a Google account, and go to myactivity, one word, .google.com. We will paste the link. Oh, Josh has pasted it already into the chat on Zoom and on YouTube. And then you can just click on there. And it's probably even easier if you're joining us on YouTube, because then you just go to that other page and you can see how much Google knows about you and what it sort of keeps as records. So we'll just give you 1 or 2 minutes to take a quick look at that. And if there's anything that you don't like, you can delete information there, and you can also set it up in a way that that you just feel more comfortable with it, I think.
And that's a good idea to go in and make a few tweaks because
Yeah.
the defaults might indeed have a lot of your information up for a long time, unnecessarily, really. So you can go in and tweak that. And then maybe on a regular basis, put that into your reminders as well. Go in and see and make sure no personal data that you're uncomfortable with is making its way to Google. So you might choose not to use the Google Assistant, for example, if you feel uncomfortable about Google having that piece of information as well. Or maybe you use an alternate uh, tool for some of what you're doing. You don't have to put all of your stuff in Google, of course, but there are a lot of really great things about Google. Alex and I are big fans of collaboration in Google, for example. For what we do, I mean,
Yeah, we wouldn't be here without Google Docs, right?
it would be
Thank you,
hard
Sheet.
without Google Docs and Google
Yeah.
Slides, certainly. I mean, the slides you're seeing here today and the slides you see for all of our sessions, we put them together collaboratively on Google Docs. Anyways, you're all trying this now, and it would be really interesting for us to hear some of your reactions. Does Google know more about you than you wanted Google to know? Of course, if you don't have a Google account, then you can't do this. But what you can do is just pop in your name and see what the internet knows about you. So I think we will leave it there. We will also share some additional information about how to delete what Google knows about you. I'll pop that link in just a second. But now we wanted to transition to talk about how you can surf safely. And I see at least one person saying, Google
That's
knows
too
too
much.
much about
Yeah.
me. Yikes, it even knows the apps that I've
Yeah.
used.
If you use Android, it's quite a bit. Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
So you can tweak those settings so it knows a little bit less. You might want to do that after this session. But let's talk about
Yeah, don't do
surfing.
it straight away. We have more.
Let's talk about surfing safely. So here's an image. Nice little coffee shop. Maybe it's an airport lounge. Maybe it's just a coffee shop around the corner. Who knows what it is? Maybe it's in a train station. But you head to that coffee shop, and what do? You use the public Wi-Fi. And we want to caution you about using public Wi-Fi because it's completely open. Often it's not encrypted, and that's, in a lot of the places we are. In fact, when we run this session in hotels, when we talk about this in other places, we usually go, is anybody in the room using VPN right now? And occasionally we get one or two people who are doing so, but that's something that we want to caution you to do. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about HTTPS, right? Secure websites.
Should unmute myself? Yes. So HTTPS is basically one of the fundamental things to look out for. And thankfully, I have to say it's really gotten better over the last, let's say, 2 or 3 years, because a lot of the developers of browsing software have made it very obvious. You may have seen sometimes in the address bar where it says this is an insecure site, because the site maybe was perfectly fine, but they didn't offer HTTPS. So they didn't offer a secure connection between the web server that you're using, let's say it's your favorite newspaper, online newspaper, for example, and your browser. That's what HTTPS means, is that there's a secure encrypted connection between your device, or your browser rather, and that service. So that's kind of one of the foundational things that you want to look out for, and the browser makers make it very easy these days. There's also a plugin that you can use, which is called HTTPS Everywhere, because you may occasionally bump into a site that actually has HTTPS, but for some reason they don't give you that by default, and this plugin will just make sure you get the encrypted connection straight away. And then, of course, as Josh just mentioned, another really interesting tool that I've been using more and more in recent years is VPN. So VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. This is kind of a drawing that explains this, but I'll try to explain it in words as well. So if you remember the old days, people used to be like work as traveling salesmen, for example, or salespersons, or maybe be an engineer in the field, and they had to connect to the company to be able to access files, for example. And that was the traditional use case for a virtual private network, is that you would be out and about with your laptop. You'd be able to establish a secure connection, so basically like a tunnel between the laptop and the company network that would enable enable you to safely and securely access those resources like a shared file server, for example. And a few years ago, companies started to offer that for consumers as well, for private users like us. So it's very easy these days and also very affordable. It's not necessarily free, but very affordable to use a service like that to secure your internet traffic. So basically, when you go to that Photoshop, to that hotel lobby, and you're connecting to their hotspot that may have no security whatsoever, you can just flip on and just turn on the VPN and make sure that your connection is secure. That's basically how it works. We'll put more information into the slides if you're interested in that. And Josh really wanted to recommend his favorite VPN service, which is TunnelBear, right?
I love TunnelBear. I love TunnelBear because it works really well,
And it's
but
cute.
also because it's very well designed. As you can see, they've got all these little bears popping out of tunnels. And as soon as you turn it on, and I could turn it on my iPad, for example, and it goes roar, connecting you to a VPN server in X location. And usually you can pick where that location is. So I won't wax poetic about VPN right now because we wanted to talk a little bit about about geo-blocking, which is sort of the flip side of VPN. Would you like to take that one, Alex?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So TunnelBear is Josh's favorite. That's what I just wanted to say. Mine's Encrypt Me, but the idea is the same. And we're looking at basically a few euros a month if you use it a lot. And I think TunnelBear has 500 megabytes for free, at least they used to. So maybe that's a good way of just starting out and seeing if it works for you. If you've looked at this image here, which I really love, with these sort of tunnels popping out of different countries on the map in Europe, and they have international locations as well. And what that means is that you can, to some extent, get around the issue of geo-blocking. So you've all seen this. Sometimes an online resource just isn't available in your location. This sometimes happens with YouTube videos because of licensing most of the time, or with a news website, maybe that's not available, that kind of thing. And these VPN services sometimes allow you to be able to use that. So what happens is that, for example, you are based in the UK, you pay your license fee, you watch BBC content in the iPlayer, and then you travel, you spend 2 weeks in Spain, and suddenly you get a completely different BBC iPlayer experience because in Spain, a lot of the stuff that you're used to watching at home is simply not available. So what you can do with a VPN is just establish a connection to the UK. So the VPN will make sure that the service that you're using thinks that you're connecting from a location in the UK. That's what these tunnels mean. They're on the map. So you get an endpoint in the country that you want, and then very often it's possible to get the full experience. Now, people used to do this for Netflix all the time because Netflix US had a wider offering than, for example, Netflix Belgium or Netflix Germany. And people were trying to get to that sort of very localized content, or Japanese, manga, that kind of thing was sometimes not available outside of Japan. That was possible with VPN. Netflix has technology in place these days where they're recognizing whether you're using a VPN, and sometimes they won't show you anything if they just find you using a VPN. So it's a bit of a mixed bag at the moment. You'll just have to see if that works for you. This is definitely not the main use case for me. It's really about protecting my connection when surfing. That's the main use case for me, and that's a really good idea. So just to pick up one recommendation that I see here from an anonymous attendee about the Tor browser. So the Tor browser kind of uses a similar idea, is that it goes through so many different servers when establishing a connection to a website that it's almost impossible to track back to who you are, so who the person is that is trying to access this website, for example. So Tor is also a resource or a tool that is recommended by Edward Snowden if you want to make sure that you're browsing anonymously. And it's basically as easy as just downloading it, setting it up, and using it. So very good recommendation. Thank you for that. And this brings us to actually a related thing. All of this is related, obviously. Secure email. And I have to say, I started years ago to sort of move away from Google services for a lot of things. I still use it from time to time. I still have a Gmail address, which I kind of use for newsletters and spammy stuff and that kind of thing. But my main email these days is with Fastmail. That's one of the recommendations I've been making for years because it's a fantastic service. They have different levels depending on what you need. If you just need a simple email address, it's much more affordable. And that means, yes, it costs money. I know Gmail is free and it has great features, but I prefer to pay a little bit of money and get privacy and peace of mind and great features too, because I have my own website, my own domain, and I want to have an email address that works with that domain. I think that's also a good recommendation for freelancers among you who want to be sort of just appear more professionally and just use in your email address your domain. So in my case, that's adrexo.de. I have an email address attached to that, and Fastmail makes that super, super easy. And I use tons of tech forward related stuff as well. Great features, very affordable, and I've been using it for years and very happy with it. Another alternative, if you really care about sort of email privacy, even more about email privacy, I should say, and encryption, is ProtonMail. They're based in Switzerland, which of course is a great sort of advantage in this field and something that just sounds good. They also have, I think, encrypted email available, and email encryption is still very fiddly these days. I don't know if any of you need that an awful lot, so maybe ProtonMail could be a good tool for you to look into if that's something that's interesting to you. But the same applies for messaging as well, right, Josh?
Yes, indeed. There are secure messaging options out there. I don't think we need to dwell on this too much. You already talked a little bit about WhatsApp and encryption built into that. So we just wanted to tell you that as we said, that information is shared with Facebook. You might want to look at something where your messages are kept secure. Something like Signal or Threema are options that will do the trick. And talking about making sure that your data is secure, this brings us right to our last point for today, which is passwords. Passwords, passwords, passwords. Let's just take a look at what you should not do for your passwords.
Everybody's favorite topic, right? Oh no, telling me about passwords again. These are not good passwords. I'll make this very, very quick and very easy. Don't use these. That's a big no-no. Use these instead. Here's some good password advice. And maybe Josh, you can just lead us through this very briefly.
Yeah, don't use names of your family members or your pets or basic words that you find in the dictionary, and don't use the same password for multiple services, because if it gets compromised for one service, then the hackers may be able to use that password that you put on multiple sites to get into another one of your sites. So it's very important to have different passwords for different services. Now, how can you keep track of all those passwords for different services? That's by using a password manager, which we'll get to in just a minute. But beforehand, we wanted to share, and of course, change your passwords that are the important ones regularly. But before that, a fun little image. This is just a little cartoon from XKCD, which is a webcomic, which talks about how you can have strong passwords. And people are trying all of these substitutions, right? I'll use a 0 instead of an O and a 4 instead of an A, and then I'll tack on things. And
yeah.
Basically, that just makes it really hard for you to remember. It's actually not very difficult for a computer to understand that you've swapped out a 0 for an O. And when they're running thousands of things to try to crack your data, they're going to try that. So instead, and we don't think you should do this for every password, by the way, this is maybe for your master password. Here's a little suggestion. Pick 4 completely random but common words. That's a lot of characters, right? 44 characters in this example, correct horse, battery, staple. That takes a heck of a long time
that one, though.
to guess. And then you just have, don't use correct horse, battery, staple, please. And then you have a little image. That's a battery staple, says the horse, and the other person says correct. Very difficult for a machine to crack, very easy for you to remember. So when you're coming up with that master password, which you should change regularly on your password manager, here's a little trick. And here are a few potential password managers, right, Alex?
Yeah, exactly. So we had a few recommendations in the chat, which was awesome. So thank you for sharing your experience as well. Always interesting for us to see. So the one that I've been using for, oh gosh, many years now, is called 1Password. And the idea being very simple. You just remember one very, very good, very strong password, like the one that Josh just explained. And then you can put basically anything and everything in there, all your passwords, usernames. If you want, you can put in your social security number or a copy of your passport, which is very useful for traveling. Saved my bacon a couple of times. So it stores much more than just passwords, just to say that. And one thing that I like about 1Password as well is that it helps me manage the so-called two-factor authentication logins. So you know that sometimes how you need to get a code through SMS that you need to enter. And doing this through SMS is a very bad idea because SMS can be spoofed very easily. So it's very easy for somebody to go in between and basically pick up the login information and then be an imposter. So 1Password manages that as well. And of course, the big caveat here, I think we just have to point that out, is that if you forget your master password, tough luck, that's your password's gone. So this is a little bit of a bet, but I can say now, I've been using 1Password how long? I would say 10 years. And I've changed my master password, meanwhile, a couple of times, obviously. But so far, so good, knock on wood. You know, I haven't had any issues, and it's saved me so much time. And it gives me tips about good passwords. It remembers them for me. It tells me when a site was hacked. It's really, really useful.
You mean, Alex, you didn't change your master password and then immediately put it in a draft in your email or put it in a note on Apple Notes or something, or like put it on a piece of
my
paper?
laptop. No,
Don't do that,
don't do
people,
that.
please, no.
Yeah, don't buy the password notebooks that you find at the airport or something like that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
So just a brief summary of what two-factor authentication is: something you know, password; something you have, could be your mobile phone or whatever; or something you are, fingerprint, Iris ID, whatever it may be. It's a combination of those. Again, there'll be more information in the slides if you want to know more about that. And we'll also link you to an excellent website that will tell you whether the services you are using online actually have two-factor authentication available. And they should, which brings us to the last, no, not quite the last slide, but sort of the last topic slide for today. Key takeaways. I think you all saw what we were sort of driving at is keep your devices up to date, make sure you got backups, that's very important. Secure your connection, could be with a VPN if you find yourself in public hotspots a lot. And of course, make sure you're using secure passwords, ideally with a password manager. And again, we'll put more resources and further reading into the slides. So there's, of course, much more that we could have talked about, but there's only so much we can get to in the space of an hour. But of course, we don't want to let you hang there just yet. We have even more recommendations, what you can do. So again, if you're joining us from YouTube, feel free to, leave another comment, like it, and subscribe, because we're also publishing sort of short tutorials from time to time. Sometimes it's a quick snippet from one of these webinars. Sometimes it's something that we've done on top of that. So if you want to make sure that you see that, feel free to subscribe. We have lots more content planned, of course. We've also added you to our mailing lists if you weren't on there already. We're always very open to new ideas and questions that you may have. If there's any topic that you would like us to cover during one of these webinars or in an on-demand course, feel free to share that with you. We have a form ready for that. If you're working in a company or somebody somewhere else where you would like to have either coaching for your group, for your company, or one-on-one coaching, we're happy to tailor something for you as well. So feel free to reach out about that as well. And last but not least, feel free to say hello on social media. We're on a lot of the networks on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So we got quite a few covered. And this now brings me to the, well, for us, it's kind of the highlight of the webinars because we get to share one of our latest projects. And I think we've come up with a real cool title for this one, haven't we, Josh?
We have.
Draw back the curtain here. That's what it is.
Yeah. Before we do this, I do want to just take a second to say thank you to the people that have been making it possible for all of our webinars to take place. We appreciate your donations. Thank you. We know you're there. We really are appreciative of your helping us to put together great content like this brand new course. This is a course called Productivity Powerhouse. Make your iPad work for you. It's designed for all language professionals, and there are 20 packed lessons, all sorts of information to teach you how to get the right gear, learn your way around gestures, swipes, taps, multitask like a professional. We go beyond what we cover in our free course here to really go into nitty-gritty detail, how you can drag and drop on your iPad, for example. We talk about how to be more productive in things like email, contacts, notes, calendars, the things we were sort of dancing around today. We go into lots of detail on that. Productivity suites, why Google's good, why Google's not good, for
That was a lot
example.
of fun, yeah. Let's
And
get
then
to
we've got
that.
all sorts of stuff too for language professionals, how to write smart, how to edit smart using your iPad, and then other things like tracking your time, taming your to-do lists, and keeping your bookkeeping and invoicing digital. So this is indeed brand new. I see a question from somebody who took one of our tablet interpreting courses. Yes, there's actually quite a lot of new content in this course. Often when we have a live tablet interpreting course, we have just a tiny bit of time at the end to talk about productivity. And so there's lots of new stuff in here. But in our courses, as we've mentioned before, we have a 15-day return policy. So check it out. If you're not happy, just let us know. We'll be happy to refund it. We also, of course, have a special offer for students, 50% off for students for any of our on-demand courses. So I see another question. This particular course is about iPads, and it brings us to the end of our iPad series. I know people have been asking for other stuff. We wanted to polish off the iPad series over the last month and a bit, and then there will be lots more coming. So that is the exciting new baby that we've been working on for
Yeah.
the last couple weeks. And I
And
certainly
yeah.
enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed this session here with all of you too. So I'll say farewell from my side from Geneva. As always, we appreciate your feedback and your support. And it's great to have you in the Tech Forward community.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. And make sure you get that 20% launch discount for the course, which you can find in the slides as well. If you want to make a donation or actually give feedback on the webinar, you'll get the chance once this webinar is closed. You'll immediately get sent to this site so you can leave some feedback and also make a donation if you would like to support our work. The recommended amount is 10 euros. And with that, thank you again. And as Josh said, it's great to have you as part of our community, and we hope to see you next week. We have something very interesting in store for you, as always. So make
Next
sure to
Tech
join
Forward
us.
talk. So we won't let the cat
Yeah,
out of the bag yet. We'll leave you hanging for another day or two, but it's going to be cool.
exactly. And with that, that's it for today. Stay safe, everyone. Take care and bye-bye.